Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Piotr Kozłowski, and I will be sharing with you some impressions, some thoughts about a country and its language, Rwanda and Kinyarwanda. Okay, let's start. But first, a word of warning: I'm not particularly fluent in Kinyarwanda. It's just one of the languages that I've been trying to learn recently. And during the presentation, I think you will get some idea why and how and what for. Okay. So there is one particular and very tragic reason that you may have heard of the country of Rwanda, and that's obviously the genocide which happened there in 1994. Actually, the anniversary is approaching. It will be next week. The genocide started on April 7th, and every year it's commemorated. The ceremony, the commemoration ceremony, is called Kwibuka. You can see the logo, and you can see basically the motto, which is to remember, to unite, and to renew. And Kwibuka itself, it's a Kinyarwanda verb, the first Kinyarwanda word that you will learn here, and it means to remember. And it's obviously it's very important to to, um, to enter into some sort of account with the past, especially the tragic past. So not to dwell on it too much, but just to recapitulate, the genocide was committed on the Tutsi community by radical members of the Hutu community. Around 1 million people were killed. And what's important here is that the division between Tutsis and Hutus is social one. It's not a linguistic division. Okay, so there is no Tutsi language or even Tutsi dialect of Kinyarwanda. Everybody there spoke the same language, and this sort of questions the often expressed dream of I call it here the Esperantist dream, but it's not only the Esperantists that believe that by having a common language you can reduce conflict between people. It can happen, but quite often it does not. Okay, so in this case, we had a common language, a social ethnic distinction between Tutsis, Hutus, and the third group, which was called Twa. It was thought to be by European scholars in the early 20th century to be basically a racial distinction, but it was also a social one as well. You could be you could change your identity over time by advancing socially. It was called Kwihutura. So stop being Hutu, you become Tutsi by for instance buying more cattle, and you could also stop being Tutsi, and it was called Huitutsura, or the another verb. But what's also interesting here is that after this genocide, which happened in a monolingual country, which was divided into two main social groups, is that new authorities, the people who are in charge of Rwanda even today, they understood the need to create new symbols. So, for instance, they changed the flag, and also to create new identities. Okay, so instead of dividing citizens into Hutus and Tutsis, there is a very strong emphasis on shared Umunyarwanda or Abanyarwanda. So Umunyarwanda is singular, Abanyarwanda is plural. Rwandan identity. So everybody is a Rwandan, and with this comes a set of new taboos. You are not supposed to refer to those earlier distinctions, which basically they still exist. People are aware of them, but sometimes they cannot express them freely. Another thing which changed as a result of the genocide was the gradual shift to English as the main auxiliary language is in Rwanda. It used to be French, but it is English now. It has to do with the stance of the French authorities before and during the genocide. But also it has to do with the fact that a lot of the Rwandan leaders, they were brought up as refugees in Uganda, so they were brought up with English, not French, as the language of their instruction. Now there is another reason you may have heard of Rwanda, especially if you're younger than me, from a younger generation. That's the Rwanda's success story in the last 2 decades or so. So it has a very good reputation for quality of governance. It's also very conscious in building its image as a progressive, safe, well-connected country. They specialize in several fields. One of them is organizing international events. They are quite good in IT related industries, and it's a country well organized and also safe to visit. And as it is really monolingual, a lot of the governmental services are also available in Kinyarwanda. So it's not one of those countries which this is a common situation in Africa, that you have the colonizer's language which is used in official context. It is not so in Rwanda. For instance, there is this governmental portal of various services for citizens. It's called Irembo, and it's available in English, French, and Kinyarwanda. And finally, about the success story, the narrative is quite different. If you read about it, if you read about modern day Rwanda, mainly in English language sources or mainly in French language sources, the assessments really differ, and that itself, I think, it is very significant. It tells you that the choice of the language is not to approach a country from is not neutral. Now, I just mentioned briefly that Kinyarwanda is the one language of Rwanda, in the sense of it's being the native language of virtually the whole population. 97%, I think, but it's not the only language, in the sense of not being the only official language. So official languages are 4: Kinyarwanda, English, French, and Swahili. And interesting things to note is that the older generation of Rwandans, they was educated in French and speaks French to this day. The younger generation is supposed to be educated in English, but there is a shortage of teachers. So reality is not as clear cut, but certainly there is a generational gap in knowledge of languages. Finally, there is Swahili, which is very important as a language of doing business and interacting in any way with the neighboring countries, such as Tanzania or Democratic Republic of Congo. It is a lingua franca there. But in Rwanda itself, Swahili is very strongly associated with Muslims, and most of the Rwandans are Christians. So there is this sort of barrier preventing it from being accepted as a truly Rwandan language. There are dialectal differences, of course, but they are relatively minor. They don't impede intelligibility, and as I mentioned, they have nothing to do with social distinctions between Tutsis, the Hutus, and the Twas. So the dialects are based on region, not on social standing, not on ethnicity. Now, what's a very important point that I would like to stress here is that I'm talking about Rwanda, but what the social situation and the language situation there is not separated from the situation of its neighboring country. Rwanda, after all, is not an island. Okay, so you have immediately southward, you have a country of Burundi, when the language Kirundi is spoken, where the very similar social distinctions basically the same social distinctions are also in place. And in fact, Kinyarwanda and Kirundi are mutually intelligible to a very large degree. You can have one grammar for the two languages, just pointing out the differences. But you can, I mean, it's feasible to write a shared grammar of the two national languages. Now, in general, the Great Lakes region in East Africa is a very important cultural zone of cultural interactions between people who are cattle herders and between settled farmers. So this is the basis of the Tutsi Hutu division. Tutsi are supposed to be the cattle owners, the cattle herders, and Hutu are supposed to be the farmers. But the social distinctions are also present in places like Uganda, and particularly in southwestern Uganda, where you have a region called Ankole and a language called Runyankole spoken there, which is actually also very closely related to Rwanda. It's also present in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, particularly in Ituri province, where you have communities such as Hema and Lendu, which again mirror the distinctions present in Rwanda. Again, so this is Rwanda is unique, but it's not separated from its neighborhood. It interacts with it. And what I would be trying to encourage you to do is to sort of take some inspiration maybe of my own progress. What I'm doing here is not necessarily trying to really learn Kinyarwanda. I'm not, I do not harbor any illusions that one day I will learn it fluently. But even learning a little bit is very important to shift perspective from an outside view to a more closer look, more understanding of what's going on there, also in terms of social and cultural life. During my journey for the last couple of months, basically at every stage, I had small but telling and to me interesting observations, starting from the fact that actually the name of the country is not Rwanda, but properly Rwanda, with the G sound, sandwich between the R and W at the beginning of the word. Some observations on assimilation of loan words. If you know any Arabic or any language which borrows heavily vocabulary from Arabic, you will find that igitabo sounds quite familiar. It means book, and it's a word loaned ultimately from Arabic. Another word, ishuri, is actually a loan from German, Schule. It means school, and so on and so forth. But what's to me particularly interesting is that by learning a little bit of the language, by learning a bit of its grammar, enough to start analyzing the literal meaning and the construction of various phrases, there's a lot of interesting nuggets of meaning that come clear. For instance, a very simple everyday expression, "Mura kozetiane," means thanks a lot, but what it really means is you've just did it. You've just did it a lot. Okay, so it's basically it's a sentence of acknowledgement, and this is very typical to any language, but particularly when you are learning a language from a culture not closely related to your own. You will find that a lot of the metaphors, the allusions, the conversational habits will differ in really strange ways, and every language has its own rhetoric, its own way of its own poetic genres, its own ways of talking about things or not talking about things. Because, for instance, in Rwanda, there is a very high value put on being indirect, on being very polite and calm, and not always saying what you mean. Okay, just to preserve social order and to preserve politeness. Another thing which I'll return to in more detail in the last part of the presentation is the role that cows play in Rwandan daily life and also in language habits. So, for instance, there is one of the most, perhaps the most important type of poetry. It's called Amazina Yinka. It means basically the praising of the cows. Okay, so those are songs where people basically boast of the cattle that they have, and this alone, is to me at least is an interesting bit, is a bit of knowledge which is interesting enough that it really justifies making the effort of trying to get a closer look to this new and unfamiliar language. Now, for those of you who had no previous contacts with Bantu languages, and Kinyarwanda is a part of that language family. Just a couple of brief notes on main characteristics of Bantu languages. First thing you notice is that there is a lot of prefixation. So almost everything, so the words change. The words are inflected, but the inflections, most of the changes came at the beginning of the word, not at the ending, like in the Indo-European languages. But it's the beginning of the word that changes a lot. And you can see that in the example sentences. So the first one, Baria Abakobga Batoya Barihe. So it means where are the little girls? Okay, and then you have the same sentence repeated, but where with the entity being asked about changed. So where are the little rabbits? Ziriya inkwa wundoya zirihe. Where are the little stones? Aria amabuya matoya arihe. Where are the small books? Biria bitabo bitoya birihe. And so you have the toya, for instance, the root toya means small, little, but it is changed, it is inflected depending on the class of the noun being referred to. And same goes for other parts of the sentence. Same goes for the verb. The verb is actually, the root is ri, to be somewhere, and it changes according to the noun class of the objects. I will return to the noun classes on the next slide, but following on the prefixation, we have a quite simple mini sentences such as ndakubona, I see you. Bona is to see. N here expresses the first person, I. Nda is a marker of the present tense, and ku means you. Now, if you change the marker, then da of the present sentence into za we will get the future. Nzakubona, I will see you. And then again, you have many more options because of the number of the noun classes. You have many more options than in the European languages. You see them is urababona if you are talking about girls or people, basically anything from the people class. But urazibona if you talk about, for instance, rabbits or other animals. And if you're talking about stones, you see stones would be urayabona. Okay, so the markers change, but all the markers come, or the markers here come before the word root, in this case bona. Okay, basically the most important thing in Bantu languages, the most characteristical thing of them is the noun classes. Basically, those are the equivalent of gender in other languages families, but they have nothing to do with real life gender. Okay, there is no female class, no male class, nothing of the sort. But nouns are divided in groups which behave in terms of grammar, they behave differently, and in theory, each class has a kind of broad meaning. There is a class of people, there is a class of animals, there is a class of plants, there is a class of big things, there's a class of small things, class of liquids, of qualities and actions, class of abstract nouns, and class of places. But in practice, there is a lot of exceptions. The system is not like fully regular. Like in every language, a language is alive. It has its fuzziness, its own irregularities, okay, exceptions, and so forth. But what's interesting here, what I wanted to show you is that you can because of the way the class system works, you can play around with words. For instance, by making diminutives. Okay, so pet names for something. You have a word like umugabo, which belongs to the people class. It means man. But if you change the prefix to iki, you would get ikigabo, which means big man, a hulk of a man. It's not a nice word to say, apparently. And if you change the prefix again to aka, you would get akagabo, which means small man, little man, tiny guy. And this is sometimes used to tease somebody or to display affection. And it doesn't work with all noun roots, but with several it can. And finally, just to illustrate the power of that system, let me quote a list of nouns with their meanings. They all come from the same root, ntu. So umuntu is a person, abantu is people, ikintu is thing, ibintu things, akantu is something little, something small, utuntu is little things, ukuntu is method, ubuntu is generosity, and ahantu is place. Okay, so having all that, my question for you: what does ntu? What does the root itself mean? And actually, to me, it seems that it's basically the prototypical member of a class. That it's actually the class prefix that carries the meaning. Okay, let's get to the most interesting bit, at least for me. One thing you have to know is that Rwanda, of course, is a modern society, okay, but at the same time, it's deeply rooted in its tradition. And traditionally, a number of cows that you owned served as the best measure of prosperity, of wealth, that people would aspire to have as big as a herd as possible. The main Rwandan culture is a bit rural, is quite a bit cow-centric, so you dedicate a lot of attention to cows. Cultural realities, of course, change, but life on a modern cattle farm is still an ideal to be, sought after. So a lot of people, dream of, acquiring fortune and then spending it on buying up a huge ranch and then retiring to live there. And that's the good life. And it's really not only in Rwanda but in neighboring countries as well. This is a sort of ideal, and it's no surprise. It should be no surprise that it has some reflection also in language, in terms of kind of metaphors you use. So, for instance, you can compliment someone by saying, compliment a girl by saying that she has maso yinyana, so calf eyes. When you say somebody does kugabira, kugabira means to give cows, to distribute cows among your allies. Basically, usually you use the same verb when you talk about distributing political positions, for instance, or nominating someone to high post. You can say gokurikiza imfizi, somebody is following the bulls, to praise him that he's behaving like following the example of his elders, of behaving like he is expected to. Now, there's quite a lot of greetings and congratulations, well wishes, which have something to do with cows. For instance, you can greet somebody with Giria Inka, have cows, or you can also say gira umugabo, literally have a man, so be married. That's what you can wish to a young female relative. You can also use the word amasio, which literally means herds of cattle, as a kind of greeting, right? And to which the answer is amashongore. And amashongore means herds of female cows specifically, so the herds of which will be then growing. And finally, you have a lot of holy cow type of expressions, but they are not jocular as can be in English, but in Rwanda, in Nziza, so beautiful cow is quite a normal way to express emotion or disbelief, amazement, something like that. Another important and very commonly occurring expression is culturally significant one is Yampaye Inka. Literally, it means he gave me a cow, and it can be used to praise, to remember the good deed of somebody who actually presented you with something important. But also, it can be used to express an emotion. So, in a moment of strong emotion, you can say Yampaye Inka. He gave me a cow. And this is and then there is much more of this. There's a lot of expressions on how to measure the time of the day, depending on whether the cows are at the pasture or coming back or drinking or happy or whatever at that time of the day. So this is absolutely, to me, this is absolutely fascinating, and the fact that it survives in a highly modern, highly connected society, this tells a lot about the resilience of cultural patterns. I think it's a very interesting lesson with a broader meaning. And actually, that's the main point. Rwanda is both modern and different from sort of globalized culture, and I think deep down we all are. So every culture retains quite a lot of its specificity even when being connected, but perhaps it's more closely more clearly visible in a culture different from my own. So it moves into future, but and tries to forge new identities, as I mentioned, the common identities for all Rwandans. But past is very much relevant. It's not even past. I mean, it's still with us. It's still with them. And since there is a single language in the whole country, it means it's widely used. It means it has quite a lot of administrative usage. This in turn means that there are relatively good resources, so you can at least compare to other African languages. So it's all in all, it's a nice place to look for a bunch of interesting social linguistical quirks, and then that's what I would recommend, at least to some of you, to take a closer look. This is a very important. I mean, what happened in Rwanda offers a very important lesson, I think, to all of us, and that alone can justify a degree of interest. And I think it's very relevant also. Also, if you are interested in how nations progress, how nations rebound from tragedies, how are they developed? Those are all interesting questions, and taking a look at Rwanda can provide you with some hints of an answer. Okay, I think I'll be finishing in a couple of minutes. Let's finish by wishing you Muzagire Umgaka Wamata Nubuki. So may you all have a year of milk and honey. Milk and honey are the traditional delicacies of Rwandan life. And if I've managed to get you interested in Rwanda, my general advice is quite broad. Try to read as much as you can. Try to meet people from there. Try to travel. I mean, it's a very safe country to travel. So I can encourage you with good conscience to do that. Listen to people, read, but above all else, listen and read to Rwandans, not necessarily to people like me who are outsiders, trying to share the few pieces information that they have. Just in modern day and in modern world, it's quite easy to get to know people from there, and such interactions are really worthwhile. I think they are always worthwhile. And I have a specific recommendation too. If you're into books, there is a very interesting Rwandan author writing in French, but also translated to English. Her name is Scholastique Mukasonga. And her book I would particularly recommend is Our Lady of the Nile. It tells the story of a school for girls. I think back in 1970s. It's set in 1970s. It seems that way. But apart from its main plot, it tells you a lot about Rwandan society and about how the past is still relevant, decades after. Okay, does the Nya in Kinyarwanda have a meaning of its own, and is there a reason why it's absent in Kirundi? Okay, so the meaning is I think it's a fossilized form of a genitive particle. So the word meaning of. So basically, Kinyarwanda is the thing of Rwanda. Okay, and it comes also in other words. For instance, the word for foreigner is umunya mahanga. Mahanga is elsewhere. It's outside. So umunya mahanga is a person from outside, a person of outside. And why it's absent in Kirundi, I don't know. I don't know exactly. I think it's just a quirk of usage. Maybe it has to do with how the name of the country, of the kingdom, came to be. I don't. I confess I don't have. I don't know the history of Burundi very much, but very well. But you can see that Burundi has a prefix, it's a noun, but in a particular class, and Rwanda doesn't. It doesn't have a prefix. So that may be a clue. Okay, moving to the second question. I've read in an article that Swahili has a negative image in Kinshasa due to its strong association with the Rwandan military intervention. How long has Swahili been used as a lingua franca in Rwanda? The second half of 19th century. That's the second, to answer the second part of the question. I mean, in general, Swahili has is a widely used language, but it's not a neutral language. It has different associations in different countries. For instance, in Uganda, because it was the language of command, of military command during Idi Amin's time, the very tough time for that country. It has a negative association, and of course, it was the language that Rwandans knew and had in common with the Congolese when they were intervening there. So it's it's no surprise to me that it may be associated with their presence, even though for Rwandans themselves, it's also not an insider language. As I said, it doesn't have a particularly positive reputation in Rwanda. It's associated with Muslim traders. Basically, it's not. It doesn't have a bad reputation, but it's basically it's language of somebody else. Okay. Is there any mutual intelligibility with Swahili and other Bantu languages? I would guess that with Swahili, I mean, okay. So first, quite a few people in Rwanda know some Swahili, and for them, learning more is quite easy. But if you were starting from scratch, there is very little. And if there is something you can understand, it's basically Swahili loanwords which are present in Kinyarwanda. Not a lot of them, but enough to be visible. And I think there is this gradient on which Kinyarwanda and Kirundi are very, very close, and then languages like Runyankole are also close, but significantly different. But basically, neighboring Bantu languages, they would have a lot of similarities in vocabulary, and then basically very similar overall structure. So even if you don't know the vocab, you can build it up quite a lot, because the logic of the functioning of the language is very similar. Okay, question number 4. Is there a nice crash course in Polish or English? There are some people from the country in my town, and I'd like to be able to talk a little bit with them. Yeah, short answer is no, unfortunately not, or not yet, because frankly, I'm in Poland now, and actually, we have a number of Rwandan students, which is growing year to year. So one of my pet ideas would be to basically try to organize something to get people together. We have at the Warsaw University, we have a faculty of African languages and cultures, and maybe some people there will be interested to create something with high value with cooperation with native speakers. Yeah, so I'll if I get any spare time, I'll try to explore that idea. There are some textbooks available you can find on the internet. Most of them are written by missionaries, and they have some quirks which relate to that. But you can approach me directly, and I can share links and some tips on resources. How are English, French, and Swahili perceived in general Rwandan society? Okay, I think I've said about Swahili. It's a language of trade with the East African community, but it's closely associated with especially with Muslims. The French, it's complicated. On one hand, it's a language that has a lot of history in Rwanda. It's a language of expression of many Rwandans, especially of the older generation. But there are political grievances, basically, stemming from both the colonization. So you had the Belgian colonization, which were the colonizers' language. The language that the colonizers used was mostly French. And then you have the genocide, and basically the French are accused of supporting the pre-genocide rulers of the country, and not behaving, not doing enough to prevent the genocide from happening. So that's it. It's a bit complicated, but this is all on political level, on a level of day-to-day interactions. I don't think there is any meaningful problem with using anything. Rwandans are very interested in making connections, and keen on learning. So I don't see any downside here. Is multilingualism common or the norm in Rwanda? Yes, definitely. I mean, depending on how you define multilingualism, but but in general, the four languages, they're not separated. They intersect quite a bit. I wouldn't be surprised if you found a significant number of people who speak all four to various degrees. And because of the change of the second official language from French to English, you still have a intersection between people who are really educated. They would know both. Okay. So adding to that, Kinyarwanda, their native language, they already have three, and maybe Swahili, and maybe something else. So, for instance, people who spend the part of their lives in emigration in Uganda, maybe they may be speaking Luganda or Runyankole, depending on the place they had been living. Okay, I think that's all. I've managed to answer all questions and still be in time. That's good. Is education to the highest level available in Kinyarwanda? If not, till which level? As far as I know, tertiary education is in English or French, but today mostly in English in Rwanda. Secondary, I'm not sure. Certainly there are Kinyarwanda classes, but whether the curriculum is wholly in Kinyarwanda, I can't tell. I will check it out. But also in university, of course, you can study Kinyarwanda in Kinyarwanda, and there is a strong emphasis, for instance, in journalism, in educating journalists and public relations specialists and such. So it's also used at the university level for sure. It's not the language that hard sciences are taught at the university level. Okay. Let's wrap it up. Thank you very much for taking your time and listening. It's been a pleasure for me. I hope it was at least somewhat interesting for you. If there are some questions still unanswered or unasked, feel free to approach me, and let's keep in touch. I wish you the best for the rest of the Polyglot gathering, the most interesting discussions. Okay, thank you.